Hi, Mateo. I'm so happy that you're here and doing this right now. Okay,
Yeah, I'm
excellent.
happy to be here.
I'm gonna make you co-host. Everyone, this will be a nice small meeting. Mateo is gonna tell you everything about himself, everything. He's done 100 webinars. You have, right?
Yeah, I'm a pro at this point.
Hold on. Mateo, I emailed you. Do you want me to send it to you again?
Sure, yeah.
So, hold on. So if you can just go over everyone, this is last year's information and it's probably going to be the same. So I'm sending it to you. You got it?
Yep.
I just emailed you. So, and again, we don't expect much variation from last year. Okay. Okay, go right ahead. So tell me once you're ready to share screen and I will let you take over.
Okay. Yep, I'm
And
ready.
Mateo's going to tell you about himself. Enjoy. Have fun. Bye.
Okay. Yeah, so a little bit about myself before I get into this. So my name is Mateo. I'm a rising sophomore at Columbia. I attended Hunter. I went there, I got into there at seventh grade, and I attended it until, senior year. And a couple one thing that Francis really likes me to mention about myself, it's written right here. In Hunter, I got a 1600 on the SAT and also a perfect score on the PSAT. I hate to mention that, but Francis really wants me to mention that a lot. Um, and so right now at Columbia, I'm studying math and chemistry on a pre-medical track. During Hunter, I did a lot of, I did stuff sort of with like math competitions, right? Like, the AMC, the Amy. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Just sort of like math competition stuff. I also played piano, and I would do stuff involving that too. Yeah, so, but anyway, that's enough about myself. We can just sort of just start talking about Hunter at this point. Um, Yeah, so let's get into it. So first of all, just a little bit about what the Hunter test is. So you guys know Hunter High School, I'm assuming. It's in my opinion, obviously I'm biased, but in my opinion, I think it's the best high school in the city. And there are 2 points of entry for high school for Hunter. They allow people to enter in the elementary school, which starts in kindergarten. They take basically like an IQ test in kindergarten, and then they'll be admitted in, depending on how they do. Obviously we're not prepared, we're not yet we're not in that business yet for tutoring kids for that, but they have a second point of entry, which is in sixth grade. You take the Hunter test. In the winter of sixth grade you take the Hunter test, and depending on how you score on that test, you will be admitted into seventh grade to start high school at Hunter. So the Hunter test is essentially, it contains three sections: a math section, well, really, okay, two sections: a multiple choice section and an essay section. And the multiple choice section consists of math and ELA. And you have an hour for the math, an hour for the ELA, and an hour for the essay. And the way the grading works is you need to get a certain score on the multiple choice in total. It doesn't matter how it's distributed between reading and math, just like a certain number of multiple choice questions correct. And then you qualify to get your essay read. But once you hit a certain threshold, this is very important. Once you hit a certain threshold on the number of questions on the number of multiple choice questions, like once you qualify to get your essay read, the number of your actual score on the multiple choice doesn't matter beyond that. And from that point, it's entirely determined by how you do on the essay. And the reason Hunter does that is because they don't want a bunch of like robotic kids who are really good at multiple choice but don't have, a good personality or like something like interesting things to say on their essay or aren't well spoken. So the reason so to counter that, they make admissions beyond a certain point, beyond a certain baseline on the multiple choice entirely based off of the essay. And that's how they get well-rounded kids. That's how they get, kids who are supposed to be like, well-spoken with good vocabularies, all of that sort of thing. And the Hunter test is extremely difficult. Um, so number one, you need to qualify to take the test, and you qualify through state test scores. There's another way to qualify, which I'll get into a second, if your school doesn't take state tests. So you need to be, I think, in around like the top 10% on your state tests before you take the Hunter test. Around 3,000 kids take the Hunter test each year, and then of those, around only 150 will be admitted into Hunter. So that's something like a 5% admissions rate. Which is, obviously that's very, very punishing, especially considering all of those kids who've qualified to take the test. Um, they had to qualify, like they had to qualify. It's not just 3,000 kids off the street and 150 get in. It's 3,000 kids who did very well in the state tests, and then they qualify to get in. So it's a very difficult test, but there's definitely ways to prepare for it. You can get very, very good at the multiple choice, and then you can learn what they're looking for on the essay, and you can sort of maximize your chances of getting in. That's what Cruller Prep is in the business of doing. But first, before any of that, let's just read some of this stuff right here, some of like the actual, the eligibility to take the Hunter test, the logistics about the Hunter test. And yeah, then I guess we'll save some questions, save some time at the end, maybe to go over a few questions from the test to give you an example of what it's like, or maybe for questions.
And I just want to add the Ravina account. It's going to be live next month. That's where you're going to upload proof of scores and proof. It's called Ravina. If you didn't take the Hunter state scores, if you didn't do it, you can actually just go to Cruller Prep and we can administer an exam here that we would proctor in a safe setting. You can do that as well. But go right ahead, Mateo.
Right. Okay. So so we want to inform you of okay, well, I'm not going to read that part, but so the test is conducted, it changes each year, but it's generally conducted in the early each year, late January, early February. I think mine was early February. And of course, as I mentioned, there's eligibility for the test. You can't just walk from the street into like Hunter College and start taking the test. You need to qualify first, and you qualify through the state test. So here are the minimums from last year. So for ELA, and you qualify through the fifth grade state test. For ELA, you must get a 474 or higher, and for math, you need to get a 496 or higher. However, if you don't meet those cutoffs, there is a sort of a side channel way that you can apply to take the Hunter test with slightly less restrictive cutoffs. So, 465 plus for ELA, 488 plus for math. Still high, still cutoffs, but there is another way to get through that if you don't meet these minimums exactly. And again, these minimums tend to change every year, but they are tended to gear, they're sort of calibrated so that around like the top, you need to score in the top like 90% usually. And so the application opens in fall of the year preceding the year of the test. So it would open in, like October of 2025 for the 2026 test, which you guys would all be taking, I think. Unless if some of you guys are here for the 2027 test. Yeah. So yeah, here's the link for you to apply, but obviously it's not that time yet. So if you don't have state exam scores, so if your school doesn't take state tests or anything like that, you can take a comparable test, a similar test. So some of the acceptable tests include the ERB, Comprehensive Testing Program, or CTP 5, and you need a 90% higher in ELA and math. You can also take the Iowa test, which again, you need a 90% higher in ELA and math. The NWEA, NWEA MAP, 90% or higher. Stanford 10, 90% or higher. Terra Nova, 90% or higher. IC, a minimum score of 8 in both reading and math. Yeah, so you can sort of see, you know, their cutoffs for the state tests are more calibrated, but you can see that basically the thinking is they want 90% of or higher. So that's a good like rule of thumb to know to sort of predict where you want to fall in terms of eligibility. And I think yeah, I think as Francis was mentioning, Queller Prep off is a testing site for a lot of these tests. So if you guys need to take these tests, I think you can do it at Queller Prep. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. And so here's what we were talking about earlier with the lowered eligibility. So if you don't meet the cutoffs exactly, but you still meet some, you know, less restrictive cutoffs, you can apply to still take the test. So they have a section of the website here. Yeah, if you scored 88% in ELA and math, you can, you know, still apply. You just, yeah, you need to complete an additional form. I'm not quite sure why they have that in place. I don't know why they just why they don't just lower the eligibility. I'm really not sure about that. Um, but yeah. So, and again, if you have no fifth grade scores, you can take the Sanford 10 at Queller Prep. Yeah. Here's some more information. Here's the eligibility. Yeah, so there are, you know, here's the form that you would fill out for Hunter. Yeah, and if you did miss like the higher cutoff, but you still like sort of met the lower cutoff, you can fill out this sort of like academic insights profile. I would assume that's sort of just vouching for like, no, my kid is smart, like maybe, I don't know, uh, something like that. I would imagine that it's sort of a thing where like if you do it and, you know, if you do it, like you should still be allowed to take the test. It's really just a lower cutoff. Um, and so here's where we get to all of the services that Queller Prep provides to help you prepare for the test. Um, so we obviously have like a sort of comprehensive test prep course where you know you review multiple choice, you review you know ELA, math, and the essay. And then we also have more specialized ones, like we have one that's just for the descriptive essay. We have some that are for like the like cramming right before the test, winter break, all of that sort of thing. Um, yeah. So that's the information. Francis, is there anything I forgot to mention or anything that I should talk about
No,
more?
we covered it. Let's go straight into the test so that they can see a sample exam and just some sample questions. I think we'll start from there.
Okay.
And everyone, we just want you to understand the Hunter test, and Mateo's going to go over it, but basically it's 3 hours from start to finish. And if you have an IEP, IEPs are really hard to get once you're at Hunter. They don't have like an IEP 504 coordinator. They don't have that key. So just be aware if you need to get it done, you have to do it before you enter Hunter. Go ahead, Mateo, if you can go over the test questions and review, just overview the exam, get everyone super ready to know what to expect.
Yep. Okay, so here is one of the sample past exams. This was a real exam that they offered at Hunter uh on the website. So it's a long test. It's 3 hours. Again, 1 hour per each section is what's recommended. But they don't enforce anything strict. So if you wanted, you could take. I mean, you could really alter that as much as you want. But what they recommend and what Queller also recommends is 1 hour per section. So there's 47 multiple choice questions for ELA. Uh, the the ELA is fairly similar, I would say, actually, to the SAT, obviously in terms of form, but also sort of in terms of difficulty. Like these are difficult reading passages. Um, especially for, you know, the age range. And then we have then there's 35 math questions. The math questions, the content tested is not super advanced. It's not as if they're testing you on like calculus in sixth grade or anything like that. They're just testing you on math topics that almost every like that really all of the students will have learned, but they're making you apply it in very like new creative ways that you probably haven't applied them before. Thinking outside of the box. Yeah, the math is really it's different from a lot of the math that you've seen before in school. And then we have the essay. So the essay will be, I'll give you guys a second to read the prompt. Actually, you know what? I'll just read it for you guys. So the prompt is about life in New York City and journeys that you've taken in New York City. So here's the prompt, the main prompt. Write an essay or tell a true story about a journey you have taken or take every day in our city. It can be a short walk to the store or to the school. You know, all of these sort of like examples. They try to keep it typically very open-ended. They really just want you to write about whatever. Obviously, it has to be focused on the prompt, but they just want you, this is your opportunity. The essay is really your opportunity to show that you're not a robot. It's like once you've gotten all of the correct answers on the multiple choice and once you've qualified for that, now it's time to show, okay, I'm not just a multiple choice machine. I can also, you know, write a really good essay. I have a really great personality and like things to talk about myself. Um, and one thing that they really prize for the Hunter essay is sensory detail, meaning that they want to be able to read your essay and almost feel like they're in the places and like experiencing the events that you're describing. They want to know what it smelled like. They want to know what colors were present. They want to know like what you were hearing at the time. They really want you to be able to like relay your experiences lucidly and vividly. So it's definitely a good idea to use like a lot of like strong adjectives, a lot of like adverbs, really just not to a ridiculous degree and not like into a like bloated degree, but sort of just elevate your language. And that also, you know, obviously in terms of like sensory details and stuff like that, but also in terms of the vocab that you use, they want you to show that you're very well read and can sort of apply the things that you've read um to sort of like amplifying your own voice on the essay. Um, yeah, so that's the essay. Um, I feel like okay, I feel like I should save the math for last. Um, because it's like what I enjoy the most and I feel like what a lot of people enjoy the most, so it's like I'll save it for later. Let's see. Maybe we should take a shorter reading passage and just go through it. Yeah, this is okay, this is a shorter one. So I always like to give a quick scan of the questions. I wouldn't read all of them. Um, I wouldn't like fully read all of them and all of the answer choices, but I would just scan them first. So like to determine sort of what type of questions are asking. So we see a detail question. We see a couple of vocab questions right here, hue and save for. Some like sort of interpretation questions of like, you know, like did you literally understand the language that they were using? So it seems to be like a lot of vocab questions on this passage. So now I'm going to give the passage a read. So here we go. None of them knew the color of the sky. Their eyes glanced level and were fastened upon the waves that swept toward them. These waves were of the hue of slate, save for the tops, which were of foaming white, and all of the men knew the colors of the sea. Okay. Um, so whenever a reading passage presents something like in a way that's sort of not standard, in a way that's not as like direct as it can be, and not sort of just here is what happened. You always want to think about like why are they using this sort of language? Why are they getting this across? So for example, this idea none of them knew the color of the sky. Well, why is that important? Why would the author include that? Well, the reason why the author included that is to show that they're very focused on the task at hand. Because, okay, first of all, we get that the them is probably they're probably on a boat or something like that. And the reason why they're not looking at the sky, the reason why they don't know the color of the sky is because they're just focused on the sea. They're focused on like staying afloat. And we have well actually I would yeah, we have like this vocab was underlined for us, so we know that it's going to be referenced later in one of the questions. So we might as well, right now figure out what it means. So we have these waves were of the hue of slate, save for the tops, which were of foaming white. So what does hue mean, first of all? Um, so really what this is where sort of the connections we made earlier about the passage start to come in because what we learned was that the reason why they said no one knew the color of the sky is because they're focused on the sea. So it makes sense that they would say no one knew the color of the sky. However, they were so focused on the sea and they knew the color of the sea. In fact, that's exactly what they say. And in general, like we see color mentioned a lot, right? You have the color of the sky, and you have the tops of the waves are foaming white, and they knew the colors of the sky. So I would assume that hue has something to do with color because this entire paragraph is using color to sort of explain what the men are focusing on. And then save for the tops. Well, I would assume that save for means, if we're talking about the waves are one color, save for the tops, which were white. Well, it's like the waves are entirely one color, they're slate, except for the tops, because the tops are somehow they're still part of the wave, but they're the part of the wave that aren't slate. So it makes sense that save for would mean something like except for. So a sort of something we can take away from that is you can try to restate some of these sentences in your own words, and then you can sort of start to realize what the underlined words mean. But okay, I will say, trying to work out the vocab from context clues is definitely doable. They definitely include a lot of context clues for you to figure it out. But the best way to make these questions like super easy, just like automatic free points, is to read a lot and get a great vocabulary. That's something I really, really recommend for the Hunter test because that will not because 2/3 of the Hunter test is linguistic, right? It's ELA and the essay. If you read a lot, you'll learn from other writers for your essay. You'll get a great vocabulary, which makes questions like this, like what does hue mean? What does save for mean? It makes it like automatic for you. So first takeaway so far is just read a lot for the Hunter test. Uh, but I've only read like a couple sentences so far, so I'm gonna try to speed it up. The horizon narrowed and widened and dipped and rose, and at times its edge was jagged with waves that seemed thrust upon points like rocks. Many a man ought to have a bathtub larger than the boat which here rode upon the sea. These waves were most wrongfully and barbarously abrupt and tall, and each froth top was a problem in small boat navigation. So far, there's nothing really new that we couldn't have that wasn't already communicated in the first few sentences. So that's kind of nice. Viewed from a balcony, the whole thing would doubtless have been picturesque, but the men in the boat had no time to see it. There were other things to occupy their minds. Okay, this is interesting because so this idea of like picturesque, well, what we've been talking about so far is sort of like it's all about painting a picture, right? It's about what color is the sky, what color is the waves, what color is the top of the waves. So this seems to be a very important sentence because now it's sort of making something that was implied, um, something that was only in the subtext explicit. Now they're saying like we are painting a picture of the scene, but that's sort of something that the narrator can do, but not the men actually in the scene because they're very occupied and they're focused on like survival. All right, and then final paragraph. It would be difficult to describe the subtle brotherhood of men that was here established on the seas. No one said that it was so. No one mentioned it. But it dwelt in the boat, and each man felt it warm him. They were a captain, an oiler, a cook, and a journalist, and they were comrades in a more curiously iron-bound degree than may be common. The hurt captain, lying in the bow, spoke always in a low voice and calmly, but he could never command a more ready and swiftly obedient crew than the motley three of the boat. There was a comradeship that made the journalist, who had been taught to be cynical, know even at the time that this was the best experience of his life. but no one said that it was so. No one mentioned it. So again, we're having this idea of like they're just focused on survival and they're not being like overly concerned with like, oh, is this the best, like is this the beautiful scene, is this the best experience of my life? They're focused on survival, but they still are sort of understanding um the significance of this moment. So now let's get to the questions. In this passage, the color of the sky is blank. Trick question. No one knew the color of the sky. And we're sort of trying to get into their point of view. So this one's going to be not stated because the whole importance was that the sky is not related to their survival. The sea is related to their survival. So that's why they're looking at the color of the sea and they know it well, but they don't know the color of the sky because it literally just doesn't matter to them. 14, as used in line 2, hue means what? Well, we just talked about this. Hue means color. I mean, the entire first paragraph was extremely obsessed with color. And then 15, as used in line 2, the phrase save for means except. Um, Again, we talked about that. The most of the wave is slate colored, which is like sort of a gray color, save for the white top. So it's, creating a contrast most of the wave except for this part of it. Um, and then 16, the fact that the horizon narrowed and widened and dipped and rose suggests what? Well, again, we can go back to that passage, but we sort of know. I mean, we're talking about waves, right? And they're on a boat. So on a boat, you're sort of rocking. Like if you look at the horizon, it'll like rotate a little bit. Sometimes you'll go up and down. Of course, the horizon isn't moving, but you're moving, and you're moving because of the waves, and you're moving because you're on a boat. Um, so that's not the coming of the dawn. It's not the changing light. It's not the inaccuracy of the men. It's the motion of the boat on the sea. It's the waves rocking them to and fro. Um, 17, viewed from a balcony, the whole thing would doubtless have been picturesque, suggests that what? Okay. We talked about this earlier. It's a very important sentence. Really, what this is getting across is like, we, as readers and as a narrator, we are having a picture painted for us. But really, this is showing there's a difference between our point of view and the men's point of view. Our point of view, we can appreciate like, you know, uh, how picturesque the scene is, but they're focused on survival. So let's look for for an answer choice that sort of gets that across. A painting of the scene is needed. No, it's not that. B, people need a picturesque view. It's not going to be that either. C, one's view of a situation depends on where one is. Okay, that's interesting. We'll get back to it later. D, one's view of nature is affected by paintings. Um, okay, I'll get back to that later. And then E, people often doubt what they see. Well, I think they just threw that answer in because it has the word doubtless. But it's no one's doubting what they're seeing. We're not doubting what we're seeing, and neither is the men. So that's getting ruled out too. So we're sort of between C and D. One's view of nature is affected by paintings versus one's view of a situation depends on where one is. So the reason why I feel that C is a better choice is because we sort of like in the context of the passage, what we have is first really like we're very concerned with the men's point of view. They don't know the color of the sky. They're only focused on the color of the waves. And what we sort of do is we get into their point of view through the way the story is narrated. Because, for example, the color of the sky is not stated. So just the way the men don't know the color of the sky, neither do we, because the narrator is trying to present this scene sort of from their view. So it's like the point of view is something that's a really high priority for this author. So and we sort of talked about how important this sentence is. So it makes sense that the sentence would be saying something about a really big concern of the passage, which is point of views, perspective, stuff like that. And C sort of gets to that. It says one's view of a situation depends on where one is. Like one's perspective is important, basically. Versus one's view of nature is affected by paintings. Well, that's not something that we have evidence for. We don't know, like, is the men's view of painting of nature affected by paintings? We've never gotten any evidence for that. And like really painting is not really mentioned at all. So D, there's a difference between an answer that's, this is also an important topic. There's a difference between an answer that's sort of credible, something where it's like, oh, I could buy that, like that could work, and something that you have evidence for. If you like a lot of things that like might make sense, but if you don't have evidence for it in the passage, it's probably not going to be right. And it would only be right if the question asks for like an inference for you to make an educated guess about the passage, or if all of the other answers are just complete garbage, then you could choose something that's like that like could be true, but you don't really have evidence for. But the difference between C and D is C we have a lot of evidence for, and D we have no evidence for. So that's why C is the better answer. Um, all right, number 18. The phrase other things to occupy in their minds suggests that the men are thinking about, we've talked about this a lot, survival. All right, they need to make sure they don't capsize on this boat. 19, the captain can command the other men in a calm voice because A, the sea is not loud, B, the men are united in their purpose, C, they have worked together a long time, D, the boat is close to land, or E, the men are thinking ahead. Okay, this is an interesting one, and I think we should go back to the passage to answer it. All right, this is that big paragraph in which where that quote appeared. It would be difficult to describe the subtle brotherhood of men that was here established on the seas. No one said that it was so, no one mentioned it, but it dwelt on the boat, and each man felt it warm him. They were a captain, an oiler, a cook, and a journalist, and they were comrades in a more curiously iron-bound degree than may be common. Okay, so there's like a strong bond between them. The hurt captain, lying in the bow, spoke always in a low voice and calmly, but he could never command a more ready and swiftly obedient crew than the motley three of the boat. Okay, so that's sort of the context clues we've gotten that the men have like a strong bond. Because and that makes sense because they need to survive. They need to not like they need to not get stranded at sea and not like go overboard or anything like that. Um, so A, the sea is not loud. This is something that we don't have counter evidence for, but we also have no evidence for it at all. So while we don't know that it's wrong, we know that it's not really right. So we can eliminate that. B, the men are united in their purpose. Well, that definitely seems to make sense, right? Because what was that quote? They're iron bound in to a high degree or something like that. Curiously iron-bound degree, more curiously iron-bound degree than may be common. So bound means like sort of tied to each other. They're united. So that seems to be right. C, they have worked together a long time. Again, this sort of gets to this is the trickiest type of answer because it could make sense. It could make total sense, and we don't have any counter evidence for it. And it's totally plausible. Like, yeah, maybe they've worked together a long time, but do we have evidence for it? No, we never saw that. So this one we can eliminate. D, the boat is close to land. We don't know. And E, the men are thinking ahead. Could be true, but again, we don't have evidence for it, and we do have evidence for B. So always the one that you actually have evidence for is going to win over the one that's plausible, but you don't actually have evidence for it. 20, as used in line 16, motley means. Okay. I feel like they threw colorful in because the entire passage is so obsessed with color. But the answer is not colorful to this one. I'm gonna try to go a little faster because I want to get to the math. We can look, our biggest clues here, they were a captain, an oiler, a cook, and a journalist. Those have almost nothing in common. And yes, so those have almost nothing in common. So it's sort of this is like not really a group of people that would have much to do with each other ordinarily. The reason why they have a lot to do with each other and the reason why they have a strong bond is because they need to survive collectively. Um, so colorful. Um, wouldn't we don't have evidence for. Curious, we don't have evidence for. Uncooperative, definitely not because they are very cooperative. Quiet, we also, I mean, we do know that they're quiet. Um, well, we know that the captain's quiet, and we know that in general they don't tend to recognize like the sort of bond that we have, but maybe they are like yelling to each other. We don't really know. But varied, we definitely have evidence for because we said earlier that captain, cook, oiler, and journalist have nothing to do with each other. All right, 21. There was a comradeship that made the journalist who had been taught to be cynical know even at the time that it was the best experience of his life. Okay, so first of all, we know that cynical has something to do with the journalist because the journalist was taught to be cynical. And number two, we know that cynical is sort of, we also want to track like the sort of the turn that the sentence makes. So we know that cynical is sort of in contrast to knowing even at the time that it's the best experience of your life, right? Like even the journalist who is cynical, so even though the journalist is cynical, he can still recognize that this is the best experience of his life. So there's something to do with cynical that means that you don't recognize when good things are good. That's what it seems to that's what we can maybe get from context clues. So humorous, no. Talkative, no. Scornful, maybe. Right? Because scornful people don't recognize things that are good. Literary, maybe. Curious, also maybe. And the reason why I'm saying maybe for literary and curious is because a journalist would definitely be taught to be literary, right? And same for curious. Of course, a journalist would be curious. But these don't have that element that we talked about, which is, it being in contrast to recognizing when things are good, whereas scornful does. And that also would have something to do with journalism because you have to, critique things and investigate things and sort of you get, yeah. So so yes, scornful seems to make sense. And then last one, 22, the narrator's attitude towards the men is one of a we talked about this. The narrator is removed from the men because he can focus on things that they can't, and he sort of has a higher perspective of them. He can say like things like, if an outside observer were to have saw the scene, it would have been picturesque. So he sort of has like a higher point of view than any of the men. So he's not a participant. He's not critical at all. If anything, he's like sort of praising them subtly. He's not a painter, and he's not an oceanographer, but he's definitely an observer. He's like an outside observer who has like sort of a perspective that's removed from the situation. Okay, so that's an example of a Hunter reading passage. This one I would say is a little bit on the easier side, but it's pretty similar to what you would get normally. All right, and here's the math. Here's the more funner part. I don't know. So it starts off. Um, Sorry. So anyway, so the math starts off with the very, very straightforward stuff, right? We have literally just addition for the first one. Just sort of translating math pro like words into like I no, still just like basic arithmetic for 49. Same for 50. 51, you're simplifying fractions. 52, same thing. One thing I will say is there are sort of ways to go a little bit faster on these questions, even though they're straightforward. There are still ways that preparing for them can help you improve. An example is just take 48. It's simple addition, right? Like you just have to do the addition. Well, not exactly. There's sort of ways to prepare or ways to do things faster. So the first thing to notice is that your your rightmost digit is gonna be like is gonna result from 4 plus 8. So it's gonna have 4 plus 8 is 12. So your rightmost digit is gonna be 2. And that's one you can see right away, and that already eliminates B and E, which end in 8. And then you can sort of estimate, right? Because so you're adding something that's around 6 to something that's around like 24, 25. So that's obviously not going to add up to 3. And it's definitely going to add up to something that's bigger than that's bigger than 30 because like this is bigger than 5.5. It's bigger than 5.5, and this is bigger than 24.5. 5.5 plus 24.5 is 30. And this is bigger than that, so it's going to be bigger than 30. So just on that, without actually doing the addition, we can sort of reason out that the answer should be D without finding things explicitly. And that's sort of my biggest recommendation for the math and also for all multiple choice. Be lazy. You're not trying to find you're not trying to find the answer. You're trying to find the best answer out of the five that you're given. So try to do that with like the minimum amount of information that you can and the minimum amount of work that you can. Um, so sort of something I like to compare it to is it's almost like if you're presented with an image and you need to find what the image is, and the image starts really, really blurry. It's like, okay, you need a little more detail to find out what the image is of. So you add a little more detail. Can you figure out no? Can you figure out no? And then like once you reach like the minimum detail that you can sort of figure out what the image is of, then you move on basically. That's what I like to compare multiple choice to. So yeah, this is all very standard. And now we have sort of one of the trickier problems. Um, so something that's less standard. So let's see this. What is the 180th, what is the 185th digit in the following pattern? And the pattern is obvious right off the bat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. This is just the numbers, right? Like the natural numbers, the numbers starting on 1. So the hard part here is not recognizing what the pattern is. The hard part is figuring out, okay, what's the 185th digit gonna be in this pattern? So let's try to figure that out. So the first thing to notice is that we're sort of interested in how often and like sort of like how often does the pattern repeat? Or sort of how long does it take for the pattern to repeat and how can we sort of make it as predictable as possible? So the first thing here is that this part is all one digit numbers, and then everything that comes after it up to 99 will be two digit numbers, and then everything after 99 up to 999 will be three digit numbers. So first of all, is 185 going to be in this sort of is it going to be in the one digit number sector? Obviously not. There's only 9 of those. Is it going to be in the two digit sector though? Well, in the two digit sector, you're going to have um, all the numbers from 10 to 99, which is 90 numbers. And each of those numbers has two digits. So 90 times 2, that's 180. And then you have 9 digits on top of that to begin with. So that's 189. So it definitely seems like it seems like your answer is gonna be in this two digit like sort of section of the pattern. And so we can definitely use that. Um so one thing that I'm gonna do, there's a couple sort of a couple things that you can do to solve this. Um let's see which one would be okay. So the first thing is that we have 180 two-digit numbers, and we have and we have 9 one-digit numbers. So once we get to 99, like the last 9 in 99, that's going to be the 189th number. The last 9 in 99. And that's very close to the 185th, right? So what we can do is we can basically just work backwards. We should just go 4 to the left to find what the 180 fifth number is going to be. So we have 98, 99, 97. So this is the 189th. This is the 188th. This is the 187th. This is the 186th. And this is the 185th. Okay, so our 185th is 7. So our answer is 7 for this question. So sort of like the lesson from this is sometimes it's better to work backwards, and it's also better to think on sort of like a higher, on sort of like a broader level before you like dive headfirst into a question. We're thinking like, okay, there's 9 numbers here and there's going to be 180 numbers here. Well, that means by the time we get to 99, there's going to be 189 numbers. And that's very close to 185. So we can just work backwards, and that makes things a lot easier on us. So these math problems are pretty fun. Um, let's see. Let's do maybe one of the more standard ones. All right, so we have copycat copies charges 18 cents for the first copy and 12 cents for each additional copy. What is the greatest number of copies you can get for $3? Okay, so if we're getting any copies at all, we need to pay 18 cents. So we should right off the bat subtract 18 cents from that from $3. So $3 minus 18 cents is going to be 272 cents, or sorry, 282 cents. So we have 282. And now what we should do is we want to find how many of these 12-cent copies can we afford with our 282 cents. And to do that, we can just divide 282 by 12. And we can what sort of like we can think that yeah, and so far we have one copy, which was the 18-cent copy. So now we just divide 282 by 12. So this is 2, subtract 24, or 2.4, I guess. 42. And this is going to be 13. I'm sorry, this is going to be 3. 36. And then if we subtracted 36, we would have a remainder of 6 cents. But obviously we can't get fractional copies. Either you get a copy or you don't. So we're just going to take the floor. We're going to go like, even though this would come out to 25 and a half, you can't get half a copy. So we just have to pretend like this half doesn't exist. So now we got 23 additional copies and one original 18-cent copies. So in total, that's 24 copies. So that's one of the more standard questions. Um, let's see. Which one do I want to do? Um, hmm. Okay, let's do, this is a classic one. If you have 6 people in a room and each person shakes hands with every other person exactly once, how many total handshakes happen? All right, so I'm going to draw 6 people. These are not going to be people, they're going to be dots. Sorry. That was misleading. All right, so here's my 6 people. So, okay, now I can think. Let's say I'm this person 1. So how many people can I shake hands with? I can shake hands with 5 other people. So there we go. That's 5 handshakes right off the bat. Um, and now let's say I'm person 2. How many people can I shake hands with? I can shake hands with 5 other people. And then person 3 can shake hands with 5. Person 4, person 5, person 6, they can all shake hands with 5 other people. So that's going to be 5 times 6, which is 30 possible handshakes. But now we can think, is this going to be our final answer? And we sort of double counted here. And the reason why is because, so when I counted how many handshakes person 1 can make, I counted the handshake with 1 and 2, the handshake with 1 and 3, the handshake with 1 and 4, and the handshake with 1 and 5. And then when I counted the number of handshakes that person 2 could do, I again counted the handshake with person with person 1. So I double counted that. And then I counted all these new handshakes. Um, so sort of what's happening is when I just did like 5 other people per each person in the room, so 5 times 6, I counted each handshake from the perspective of, one person and the perspective of the other person. So I counted each handshake twice, meaning I should divide this 30 number by 2 to get 15 as our answer. And we can think like a more accurate way we could have counted that was, okay, person 1 can shake like 5 other people and make that a new handshake. And now person 2 can shake not 5 other people's hands, 4 other people's hands, because they can't shake person 1's hand. And then person three can shake, well, they could shake three other people's hands or five other people's hands. But they're not going to shake two in one's hands because that already happened. So it's going to be 4, 5, 6. And so on to get 5 plus 4 plus 2, 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, which comes out to 15. Right? 5 plus 4, 9, plus 3, 12, plus 2, 14, plus 1, 15. And I'm not gonna, never mind. I was gonna talk about something else, but we don't really have time for that. All right. 68 is a nightmare of a question. It's just about being really, really like keeping track of a lot of figures. There's yeah, it's a nightmare. Um, let's see. Okay, maybe we'll do 77 and then I'll try to answer questions. I'll try to do this quick. All right, how many two-digit numbers are increased by 18 when their digits are reversed? Okay, that's interesting. And how can we model this with like equations? Well, we can sort of the insight to this question is, well, okay, let's think of a number like 87, a two-digit number. We learned that something called an extended form for this number is 8 times 10 plus 7 times 1. And what that is it's sort of writing, every number is a product is a sum of powers of 10, right? And so you can write um you can write each number as, for example, like its tens digit times 10 plus its hundreds digit times 100. Um, so we can sort of so that's a specific case. Like 87 is 8, its tens digit times 10 plus 7, its ones digit times 1. So if we were to generalize that, let's say a number has its tens digit as t. Actually, I'm not going to do t because t looks like a plus sign. So let's say it has a is the number's tens digit, and b is the number's units digit. Then 10 times a plus b is that number's actual value. So we can get that number's actual value in terms of just the digits. Um, and now we can think, well, what happens when the digits are reversed? Well, then the ones digit goes to the tens place, and the tens digit goes to the ones place. So now instead of, let's say it's AB, now it's BA, which if we were to write it in extended form, would be 10 times B plus A. And so this should be an increase of 18 when the digits are reversed. So now we have enough to write an equation. We could write 10 times B plus A, that's our number when the digits are reversed, minus 10 times A plus B, that's the original number, equals 18, right? The difference between them is 18. So now we can, do the subtraction. So we have 10b minus, I always try to go sort of like term wise. So 10b minus b is going to be 9b. And then a minus 10a is going to be negative 9a equals 18. Now we can divide both sides by 9 to make the 9 cancel out. And then this becomes, sorry for the bad writing, guys, b minus a equals 2. Okay, now this is interesting. Now we have to think again. So what are A and B? Well, A and B are digits, which means they're numbers from 0 to 9. And so what we've learned here is that the difference between A and B has to be 2. So first of all, like the lowest that A could be is 0, because A is the smaller one. And that would mean that B would have to be 2, because 2 minus 0 is 2. And then the next lowest that A could be is 1, meaning B would have to be 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. Then 2, 4. And this is going to work all the way up to 7, which is we're gonna have 7, 9. Um, yeah, so we're gonna have 7, 9. And here, what's gonna happen is that B is still 2, is 2 greater than A. But then if we have something like 8, 10, well then B is no longer a single digit. It's 10, it's 2 digits. So we're gonna have A and B are gonna be like the possible numbers are 0, 2, 13, 24, all the way down to 79. But again, remember, 2-digit whole numbers. So we have a fake candidate, which is 0, 2. Because that would be eight numbers, but 0, 2 is obviously not a 2-digit number. We wrote it as that, but it's not. It's a 1-digit number. It's just 2. So we get rid of this fake solution, and now we just have 13, 24, 35, 46, and so on up to 79. And those are all real solutions. So our answer here is 7. Okay, so we're basically at the end of our time, but I hope that gave you a good sort of introduction into like what sets Hunter math apart from normal math, what Hunter ELA is looking for, and also what the essays are looking for, and also just some, information about how to apply to Hunter and all of that sort of thing. Um, yeah, does anybody have some last minute questions that you guys want me to answer? As you can ask in the chat, you can unmute your mic. Okay, someone asked in the chat, um, okay, what's a good way to build your vocabulary? Reading a ton and reading stuff that's sort of above your level. Because here's the thing, when you figure something out for yourself, you learn it so much better. So let's say like you read a dictionary, you're probably not going to learn that much vocabulary from it, because you're sort of having everything told to you and it's like a bunch of words thrown to you at once. But if you're reading something you're interested in, that's if you're reading something that's interested in and that's also using advanced vocabulary, you're going to sort of want to figure out for yourself what the words mean in context, meaning everything's going to stick a lot more. Um, so yeah, I would say read a lot and read things that are actually interesting to you. And number 3, read things that are sort of a little bit above your level. So I recommend something like Oliver Twist is or like anything written back in the day. But Oliver Twist is a great one because the story is still like really fun. It's a good thing. Like I think like kids would like to read it. But it definitely has a lot of advanced vocabulary and it's a great one to learn from. Any other questions? Yep. Yeah, you guys can just let me know in the chat. Um, okay, if not, well, okay, someone asked, oh, I got one more. Oh, okay. So someone asked, okay, my daughter got waitlisted at Hunter. Do any kids get off the wait list going into 8th or 9th grade? Oh, wait, like to get into 8th or 9th grade after 7th grade? No, I'm sorry, I don't think that's possible. Oh, it's valid through, oh, that's something new oh, that's interesting. I do actually, okay, that does actually, I'm realizing the reason for that. It's because a lot of kids, sometimes they go to Hunter for 7th and 8th grade, but then they go to maybe like, like Stuyvesant or, like another specialized school, for like starting 9th grade. I didn't know that was a thing. But people do absolutely get off the wait list. Like a lot of people I knew at Hunter got off the wait list. So if the wait list has been extended like that, it certainly is possible. I wouldn't, necessarily like plan on it and like stake her future on it. Like I would still plan to like take the SHSAT and all of that sort of thing. But I don't think um, it's definitely not, I wouldn't say that's, impossible. Yeah, a prep class is definitely a good idea, especially, yeah, just a little boost, yeah. Um, yeah, no, a prep class is totally a good idea. It helps you, because it sounds like your daughter, if she got waitlisted, that means she qualified to have her essays read. Right, because you don't get waitlisted. Yeah, you don't get waitlisted unless you have your essay read. So it's sort of that comes down to sort of knowing what Hunter is looking for, that sort of thing. Knowing what Hunter is looking for on the essay. Yeah. Yep, no problem. Any other questions? Okay. If not, then I think I can end the Zoom here. So yeah, I hope all of you guys have a great night. And yeah, have a great night, guys. Have a good rest of your summer too. Bye.